In the 1st century CE, Roman forces spread over Europe, implementing a brutal New World Order and having destroyed indigenous fighting forces in Achaia, Greece, Judea, Middle East, and the North African coastal region. They swept across Hispania, Spain, Italy, France, and administered what is today England and Wales as the Roman province of Britannia, but they never fully occupied Scotland. At this last unoccupied corner of the New World, a Celtic hero had developed a deadly new style of combat, guerrilla warfare, and in 83 CE his Celtic warriors formed a line of defence on a remote Scottish hill where they would fought for their lives and lands. The Battle of Mons Crocus. Albeit the location of this famous battle is disputed, the moral of this story is one that is still echoed in association with modern war such as the Vietnam. Never underestimate farmers fighting for their ancestral land. Fighting New World Order. In the 1st century, groups of indigenous people in what is now Scotland formed a highly organized society that Greek and Roman historians referred to as Caledonii, Caledonians for Caledonian Confederacy. Since the Iron Age, these highly successful agriculturalists had maintained an almost impregnable system of defensive hill forts protecting their wheat fields and resource-rich mines. Inspired by the Roman threat, the tribes dropped their ancestral differences and united to defend the last bastion of free land in the known world. In the summer of 77 CE, Rome appointed Gnaeus Julius Agricola as the new governor of Britannia, and soon after his arrival he crushed the Ordovices, the dominant tribe in northern Wales. Further marking his dominance on the British Isle, within 3 months of arriving he led an army to Mona Island of Anglesey, where they almost extinguished the last centre of Druidism, bringing centuries of sacred heritage to a hyper-violent end. Roman chronicler Tacitus gave a vivid account of the Battle of Anglesey, describing wild-haired women and barbarian Druids who created a formidable line on the shore opposite the mainland. And although Druids are best remembered as mystical religious leaders, it must be remembered that they were also legal authorities, the judicators, lawyer keepers, medical professionals and political advisors. Thus, the attack on the Druids of Mona was not only a direct strike at the spiritual heart of the Britons, but it aimed to destroy the administrative and political establishment. Fleeing Druids are said to have retreated to the relative safety of remote North Island hill forts and sacred islands, but Roman commander Agricola followed them and invaded the lands of the Caledonians. By 82 CE, Roman forces had established fortifications between the Scottish rivers Clyde and Forth, and the following year Agricola encircled the northern tribes beyond the river Forth with a fleet of warships. Agricola sent forward the fleet to make descents on various places, and to spread the general and vague panic, and then, with his army in light marching order, and strengthened by the best of the British soldiers, he advanced to Mons Crocus, of which the enemy was already in occupation. Cornelius Tacitus Agricola the 29th. On countless occasions Agricola's fleet had struck fear into the hearts of indigenous tribes, and their naval dominance often persuaded people into negotiation, and the Caledonian farmers would never have seen anything like a Roman war fleet before, and these types of voyages up and down the Scottish coasts might have rekindled the building of brocks that fortified the northeast coast of Scotland as far north as Shetland. Invading the Highlands of Scotland was never going to be that easy for the Romans, as Highlanders are nothing without our land, and throughout history this tiny nation has applied innovative and extreme guerrilla tactics to defend their fields and families from invaders. Agricola grossly underestimated the Caledonians' emotional connection with their land and heritage, and rather than fleeing in terror the Caledonians orchestrated a cunning night raid on the Roman camp of the Legio Aex Hispana 9th Legion. Bursting in upon them, the Romans, they were terrified in their sleep, causing many fatalities. The Empire Strikes Back. Agricola constructed a massive wooden fort at Trimontium Melrose and pushed his armies north to the estuary of the River Taws River Tay, where he established forts, including a legionary fortress at Inchfield. The Romans reached the northeast coast of Scotland in the summer of AD 83, seeking war with the last of the island's indigenous tribes, who had successfully avoided fighting them on open battlefields. But to flush the Caledonians from their hill forts, the Romans marched on their wheat granaries, leaving them with no choice but to fight or starve the following winter. The only surviving information about the Caledonians is in Roman sources, and according to Roman historian Tacitus, Agricola's son-in-law, in his work titled Agricola, a Pictish warrior called Caledocus was a chieftain of the Caledonian Confederacy who had united the Pictish tribes and was described as the most distinguished for birth and valor among the chieftains. Tacitus recorded, the Caledonians formed a highly effective line of resistance deploying exceptionally effective guerrilla tactics, which proved to be stronger, more creative and deadlier than anything the Romans had ever experienced, entirely changing the Roman commander's military paradigm. Tacitus also recorded a speech that Caledonius allegedly gave his people in advance of the Battle of Mons Propice, in which he described the exploitation of Britain by Rome. If this speech was ever delivered, Caledonius must have raised a nationalistic fire-breathing war dragon among the Caledonians. However, it must be considered that most historians question how the speech might have got into the hands of Tacitus, and many regard it as a complete fabrication. Whenever I consider the origin of this war and the necessities of our position, I have a sure confidence that this day, and this union of yours, will be the beginning of freedom to the whole of Britain. But there are no tribes beyond us, nothing indeed but wastes and rocks. And the yet more terrible Romans, from whose oppression escape is vainly sought by obedience and submission. Robbers of the world, having by their universal plunder exhausted the land, they rifle the deep. If the enemy be rich, they are rapacious; if he be poor, they lust for dominion. Neither the east nor the west has been able to satisfy them. Alone among men they covet with equal eagerness poverty and riches. To robbery, slaughter, plunder, they give the light name of empire. They make the solitude desert and call it peace. The only surviving record of the Battle of Mons Propice is found in Tacitus' Agricola, which says 10,000 Caledonian lives were lost at a cost of only 360 auxiliary Roman troops. It was commonplace in Roman accounts of war for the numbers in Roman armies to be diminished and for those of their enemies to be exaggerated, but most historians agree that Tacitus' account in this instance was a blatant exaggeration. As his fleet sailed north, Agricola commanded ground forces consisting of 8,000 light infantry and British auxiliaries who held the central Roman front line, while 3,000 cavalry held the flanks. The Roman legionaries were positioned in front of the camp as a reserve force, and estimates for the total size of the Roman army ranged from 17,000 to 30,000. The Caledonian army was said to be over 30,000 strong, and its front ranks were on ground level and rose in tiers up the slope of a hill in a horseshoe formation, and the Caledonian chariots charged between the front lines of the two armies. Tacitus tells us the battle began with an exchange of missiles, and that the Britons displayed both valor and skill in parrying our soldiers' javelins with their enormous swords or deflecting them with their little shields, while they themselves poured volleys on us Romans. Agricola then commanded 4 cohorts of Batavians and 2 of Tungrians to attack at close quarters with their traditional swords. This blindsided the Caledonians, who were armed with small shields and large cumbersome swords lacking thrusting points, therefore, unsuited for sword play at close quarters. Tacitus said of the Batavian warriors, rained blow after blow, shoved with the bosses of their shields and scabbed at the faces of their enemies. Having butchered the Caledonian soldiers on the lower plains, the Romans advanced up the hill, and this provoked the rest of our units to smash into their nearest opponents and massacre them. The Caledonian troops at the top of the hill attempted to outflank the Roman charge, but were themselves outflanked by the Roman cavalry. Having seen for himself how cumbersome 2 Roman legions actually were, and possibly having assessed they required about 15 tons of wheat grain every day to survive, Caledonius may have realized the best way to defeat them was to retreat to the deeply wooded northern wilderness. It was recorded that 20,000 Caledonians retreated to nearby woodlands for shelter and were relentlessly pursued by well-organized Roman man-hunting units, but the following morning Roman scouts were unable to locate a single Caledonian soldier. It was as if they had vanished into the fog. The Caledonians navigated their rugged, dangerous and wild territories following animal paths and hill roads deep into the interior of the Highlands of Scotland, which would have torn the pursuing Roman army apart. Even if the Romans did penetrate Caledonia, their supply lines would have been wide open to ambush, and it can be argued that although the Romans won the Battle of Mons Propice on the day, the Caledonians won the war, because soon after, rather than advancing north, the Romans retreated south with their tails between their legs. Search for the lost battlefield of Mons. Tacitus left only a handful of clues to help us determine the precise location of the Battle of Mons Propice, stating only that it was in northeast Scotland, on high ground, in sight to the North Sea. Many writers have proposed locations in Aberdeenshire, including Camp Stone Hill, Meagrity Hill and other knolls near the Redix Roman marching camp located just over 5 km 3 miles northwest of Stonehaven. Counterclaims include the Gas Bridge not far from Perth, Dunning in Perthshire, Duncroft Hill also in Perthshire and Knott Hill at the Pass of Grange, where the Grampians are close to the sea, and the broad valley of the Erne in Perthshire have also been proposed. For several centuries opportunistic locals and historical researchers have scoured Scottish mountains and hills with metal detectors searching for Roman archaeology to support their hunches. Professor John Kenneth Sinclair Street Joseph, the British archaeologist, geologist and Royal Air Force veteran, pioneered the use of aerial photography as a method of archaeological research in Britain and Ireland, and he led the Department of Aerial Photographic Studies at the University of Cambridge from 1973 to 1980. On 26 July 1975, St. Joseph presented a set of provocative aerial photographs taken 9.7 km 6 miles northwest of Inverurie in Aberdeenshire and about 5 km 3 miles from the footpath of Benefy Hill. The images reveal the massive Roman marching camp measuring 57.2 hectares 141 acres by 58.4 hectares 144 acres, known today as Lochigderno, situated on ploughed land to the northeast of the River Uri. Enclosed by a ditch measuring 3.35 meters 11.0 feet wide and 3.35 meters 11.0 feet deep. This is the largest known Roman camp north of the Antonine Wall. The temporary camp at Brno 20m or 32 kilometers northwest of Aberdeen covered 144 acres 60 ha and could have held 24,000 men. Dr. St. Joseph argued that the Durno encampment was large enough to have housed 2 legions and a number of auxiliary regiments, and he noted the camp's topographical setting in relation to Benefy Hill. Supporting his claim, Dr. Andrew Breeze of the University of Navarre in Pamplona believed the words Mons Propus relate to the Welsh word crit bridge, and though this word referred to the shape of Benefy Hill, which he said provides confirmation of this etymology. Benefy is very prominent owing to its isolation and the relative flatness of the surrounding terrain and the footpath mother top. The 580-meter (1699 feet) high peak naturally shaped like a female breast with a Piddish hill fort on top. The Piddish name for Benefy in the Sich means hill of the breast, but an alternative Gaelic etymology is suggested from the name Bnhf hill of the battle. Hills like Benefy held deep religious significance for the Bronze Age people who inhabited this area, and a large number of standing stones and burial cairns surround the hill. Mythotap's sacred nature is further enhanced in that archaeologists have observed the significant geodetic astronomical alignment with the nearby Pictish for Caskeben, which is currently located within Keith Hall. Referring to this alignment, Dr. Arthur Johnston said the hill of Winoki, the conical elevation about 8 miles distant, casts its shadow over Caskeben at the periods of the equinox. Return of the Caledonii. There is no doubt that Agricola won the Battle of Mons Propus, and Tacitus tells us that the 20,000 surviving Caledonians scattered into the surrounding woods, but what the Roman writer failed to record was what happened in the weeks after the battle. The Picts knew it was late in the year and the Roman battle season had ended, so the Picts retreated deeper into their northern territories, offering Agricola 2 options: to advance into worsening weather, rough terrain, mountains, bogs, and river fords, or to withdraw south for the winter. But before he made this call, Agricola was called back to Rome and never returned to defeat the Caledonians. But in his retreat a lie was forged in Tacitus's saying predominant Britannia statum myth, translating to Britain was completely conquered and immediately let go, which denoted political unification of the whole island under Roman rule after Agricola's successful campaign in the north, while in reality the territory known today as Scotland was never entirely conquered by the Romans. The construction of Hadrian's Wall began in 120 CE as a border between the civilized Roman world and the wilderness of the northern Picts, but what Roman records don't make much mention of were the 20,000 Caledonian soldiers who survived Mons Propus and continued to resist Roman rule, applying guerrilla tactics to such a degree that another nationwide stone barrier was required, with the Antonine Wall being built in 140 CE. Archaeology has shown that following Agricola's march into battle at Mons Propus, an attempt was made to set up a new Roman frontier comprising the Gas Bridge, and a series of forts, or signal stations, were located along this stretch of land running from the river Weadat down, near Stirling, to what is now the city of Perth on the Tape. These smaller structures were linked with a series of larger fortifications at what are known as the Glen Forts of Fendoke, Algebras, Bacessel, Madeline and Rum-Quarzel. This border seems to have been abandoned by 86 CE, and this is as far north as the Romans asserted any kind of power over the indigenous people. It must have truly pained Agricola's ego to have returned to Rome knowing that a group of barbaric indigenous warrior farmers had thwarted his plans for nationwide control of Britain. Conclusions. On a warm autumn afternoon around 83 CE, perhaps a handful of Pictish warriors including Caledonians stood on a gently rounded green hillock somewhere in the Scottish Islands, watching the southern horizon as a fragmented legion of battle-exhausted Roman troops, with their heads slung low, performed a downtrodden retreat. But while the Roman invasion had effectively solidified the North Island Druidic Empire, in the centuries to come, the Roman religion would finally destroy that time-worn order.